It wasn't meant for me. I want to make that really clear before I say anything else. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't digging. I wasn't looking for anything. I just happened to be in the right place at the wrong time. And now I'm sitting here with information I genuinely wish I could hand back. But I can't. I can't. And that's the part nobody tells you about accidentally discovering something you were never supposed to know. There's no return policy on the truth. So let me take you back to how this actually happened, because the details matter, and I think once you hear them, you'll understand exactly why this has been eating at me for weeks. It was a completely ordinary Tuesday. Nothing about that day felt significant. I wasn't in some dramatic situation. I wasn't having a deep conversation. I wasn't even in a particularly emotional headspace. I was just doing what most of us do on a regular afternoon, existing on autopilot, moving through the motions. And then, in one single moment, everything shifted. Not because I chose it to. Not because I went looking, but because my eyes landed somewhere they weren't supposed to land. And my brain processed what I saw before I even had the chance to look away. Here's what I've since learned about accidental discovery. And this is the part that genuinely fascinated me after I had time to think more clearly. Psychologists have studied what happens to the human brain when we receive information we didn't ask for and can't act on. There's actually a term for the specific discomfort that follows. It's called psychological reactance. And it's essentially your mind fighting against a loss of control. You didn't choose to know this thing. You didn't consent to it, and now you're stuck carrying it, which creates this weird internal friction that's incredibly hard to resolve. But before I get too deep into the psychology of it, I have to tell you what I actually saw, because I know that's why you're still watching. The notification was on the screen. It was face up. It was readable from where I was standing, and the name at the top of it belonged to someone who absolutely should not have been sending that particular message to that particular person. I'm going to be intentionally vague here, because some of these people are still in my life, and that matters to me. But what I will tell you is that what I read in those 3 seconds completely recontextualized an entire relationship that I thought I understood. Suddenly, things that hadn't made sense clicked into place. Excuses I'd accepted without question looked completely different in this new light. And moments I'd written off as coincidence stopped feeling like coincidences at all. That's the thing about accidental truth. It doesn't arrive alone. It brings an entire army of retroactive clarity with it. And you find yourself mentally revisiting conversations and situations you'd long since filed away. It's almost like your memory becomes a crime scene that you're re-examining with completely fresh eyes. And then comes the hardest question. What do you do with what you know? This is where I spent the majority of the following 2 weeks, because here's the uncomfortable reality that nobody really prepares you for. Knowing something and doing something about it are 2 entirely different responsibilities. I had information that wasn't given to me, that I had no context for, and that involved people whose full story I genuinely didn't know. I saw a fragment. I saw 3 seconds of a much longer narrative, and the question I kept asking myself was whether 3 seconds of someone else's story was enough to blow up the entire dynamic. I talked to one person I trust completely. I didn't tell him everything, just enough to get an outside perspective without compromising anyone directly. And what they said has stayed with me. They said that sometimes we're shown things not so we can act on them, but so we can understand. Not every truth is a call to action. Some truths are just truths. That reframing honestly helped me more than anything else, because I'd been approaching this like I had a responsibility to do something. Like the information demanded a response from me. But the reality is that I was an accidental witness, not an appointed judge. And those are very different roles. Now, here's a part I really want to sit with for a minute, because I think this applies to way more people than just me, in this specific situation. We live in a time when accidental discovery is happening constantly. You see something on someone's phone. You overhear a conversation at a restaurant. You stumble across a message that wasn't deleted, an email that was left open, a photo that was taken at the wrong angle. The modern world is leaking information at every seam, and most of us are completely unprepared for how to emotionally handle what we accidentally absorb. There's a concept in philosophy called epistemic burden, which is basically the weight of knowing, and I think we dramatically underestimate how heavy that weight can become when the knowledge isn't something we chose or wanted. We romanticize the idea of truth. We say things like, the truth will set you free, and in many contexts, that's genuinely meaningful. But there's another version of truth that doesn't set you free at all. There's the version that traps you, that forces you to make impossible choices, that changes how you see people you love, without giving you any clean way forward. I'm not going to tell you I've completely resolved this. Primera avente. There are still moments where it comes rushing back and I have to actively decide what to do with it all over again. But I've reached a kind of working peace with it, and here's what that looks like for me. I've accepted that I cannot unknow what I know. That ship has permanently sailed, but I have a choice about how much mental real estate I give this information on a daily basis. I have a choice about whether I let a 3-second accidental glimpse define how I move through relationships and trust and connection going forward. I have a choice about whether I become someone who is constantly hypervigilant, scanning every room for the next hidden thing, or whether I accept that life contains things I won't always be able to see, and that some of those things aren't mine to carry. And maybe most importantly, I've had to get honest with myself about something uncurrent. Part of the reason this hit so hard wasn't just the content of what I saw. It was the shattering of an assumption I'd been living inside. I had believed something was a certain way. I had built comfort and trust on top of that belief. And what I accidentally saw cracked the foundation of that. Not because the whole thing was a lie, but because reality turned out to be more complicated than my version of it. That's not a unique experience. That happens to people every single day. And I think that's the real conversation underneath all of this. Not just my specific situation, but the broader truth that the world is constantly more complex than our mental models of it. And sometimes we get a sudden, uninvited glimpse behind the curtain. And when that happens, we have to figure out who we want to be on the other side of that moment. I didn't go looking for any of this. It found me, and I spent a long time being angry about that, feeling like something had been done to me. But I'm starting to think that accidental discoveries don't actually change the world around you. They just change what you can see of it. And what you do with that new sight, that's entirely up to you. If this resonated with you in any way, if you've ever been in that position of knowing something you wished you didn't, I genuinely want to hear about it in the comments. You don't have to share details. Just tell me, did you do something with it? Or did you learn to carry it? Because I'm still figuring that out. And something tells me I'm not the only one.